Good morning and happy Thursday. Thank you for hopping on. We are going to be reading the parable of the sower this morning. So if you wanted to take a look, I'm actually going to be reading it out of Mark in chapter 4. But before we do, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You've heard something like this before, right? Probably the first level, the first context you ever heard this was as a warning against hanging out with the wrong people. I remember hearing this for the first time, probably in middle school, and the anti-drug conversations or something like that. But you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, or whatever number is true. So be careful not to hang out with the wrong people who are doing the wrong things. Then I got older, and the second level that I saw used for this phrase was more of an aspiration rather than the warning. If you become the average of the people you spend the most time with, then it could make sense to spend time with people that you want to become more like. If there's a business person or somebody has a job that you think you might want to have, or just somebody's life is going well, that the idea of spending more time with that person, learning from that person, would be a good idea. And the third level that I saw this context in, we will actually come back to in a little bit. I'm going to read through our text quickly. It says, "Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it did not have much soil. Immediately it sprang up, since it had no depth of soil, and when the sun rose, it was scorched. Since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. And other seeds fell into good soil and produced grain, growing up and increasing, yielding 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. Now, the sower sows the word. And these are the ones along the path where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan immediately comes and takes away the word that is sown in them. And these are the ones sown on rocky ground, the ones who, when they hear, immediately received it with joy. And they had no root in themselves, but endured for a while. Then when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately they fall away. And others are the ones sown among thorns. They are those who hear the word, but the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. But those that were sown on the good soil are the ones who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit, 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. You know, I've heard this parable many, many times from a very young age. And when I was a kid, I remember thinking that there are good guys and there are bad guys. And if I am supposed to be in the story, then I'm a good guy. I'm the protagonist. This made some characters very hard for me to understand, like Boromir in Lord of the Rings, or Harry Potter, the character himself. Any sort of character with inner conflict where I couldn't decide if they were good or bad, that was pretty hard for me to grasp. But several years ago, I was taking another look at this parable in particular, and I found myself identifying with 2 characters. Neither of them I would consider to be, quote unquote, the good guys. But let me explain. So here we see Jesus describing various categories of people who heard the word. If that's you, if you've heard the word, then you either, 1, would not accept it, 2, accepted it, but fell away when problems arose pretty quickly, 3, accepted the word, but were smothered by the distractions of the world, and 4, accepted the word and bore fruit. So Jesus walks us through this progression, describing those who are closer and closer to not only receiving the word, but holding on to it. And today I want to focus on the people who almost made it. The people who were choked up by thorns. What was their missing piece, by the way, stated in the parable? If you were to treat this as some sort of people watching experiment, how could you identify people who are choked up by thorns from those who are not, just by observing, just by watching? One thing that's not necessarily indicative is great sins of commission. You probably couldn't tell them apart by murder, or, well, maybe you could, but not necessarily by what they did as far as doing the wrong things. The difference isn't who did the wrong things and who didn't do the wrong things. The difference stated in the parable is fruitfulness. Those on good soil bore fruit, 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. Now, what is the difference between somebody who was fruitful and somebody who is not? You know, we live in a very individualistic, material society, and that comes with pros and cons. But it can be easy, if we're not very intentional, for our conversations to center around the financial goals that we have. How's work going? Are you enjoying it? How many years to retirement? We talk about that piece of property that we're wanting to buy so that we can put our dream house on it. It's all in our 5-year plan. And we may even refer to that house as our forever home. But where do you want to be? What is your 5, 10, 15-year plan? Where do you want to be financially, materially? The way we often talk, you'd think the purpose of life was to increase in wealth, have the house that we want, and retire comfortably. Conceptually, we know that is not the purpose of our short time on this earth, but our reality might tell a different story than that. It is so easy to get distracted by the cares of the world, the desires for other things, and we don't even realize that we're not bearing any fruit until some major event happens in our lives that snaps us out of it. We become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. I want to get back to this idea that we are so influenced by the people we are around. We all start to become like each other. I lived in this distraction of seeking comfort for the first several years that Caitlin and I were married. And not only was I not bearing any fruit, not only was I sown among thorns, but I was normalizing the idea of a professing Christian who was not bearing any fruit. My conversations were centered solely around secular topics of work, goals, household duties, and never really moved beyond that. I was perpetuating this idea that the primary objective was taking care of household business and being as comfortable as I could along the way. Because not only do I become more like the people I'm spending time with, the people I'm spending time with are becoming more like me. That is the third level. We have a responsibility to the people we spend time with, because the people we spend time with are becoming more and more like us. Not only had I been choked up by thorns, had I been distracted, I was those thorns to other people when I was contributing to their distraction. For those of us who know truth, who live out the truth, we have a responsibility to stay rooted in that truth. For those of us who understand that our time on this earth is temporary, that the money we have is to be used to make an eternal difference during this temporary time on earth, it is our responsibility to live out a life that proves that to the people around us. In Luke 17, Jesus is going to say, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come. It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. And it appears he might be talking about children in this instance, but I think the principle still stands. That by causing other people to stumble, to contribute to their distraction, it would be better for us to drown than what is actually going to happen to us. So I think it's worth asking, are we perpetuating distraction? Or are we perpetuating truth? Are we exemplifying fruit bearing? Some quick passages I want to finish with. James 4:14 says, "What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes." 1 Thessalonians 5, "While people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come. So let us not sleep as others do." Ephesians 5, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are short." The way we act, the way we talk, the way we spend our time, the way we spend our money, does it show somebody who is living a life that, like this is all there ever is? I'm going to retire and have a good time, and this is all that there is to life? Or does it show somebody who knows our time on this earth is very, very short, and the time that comes after it is what matters? Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you later.